Hey everyone, good morning. Merry late Christmas. It's good to see all of you today. Like Scott said, thanks for being here. If this is your first time since Christmas, we're just excited to have you guys here today. Today we're going to be obviously it's New Year's Eve, right? So we got a little bit talk about what's going on in this new year. So today we're going to be talking about kind of a new year and an opportunity for a new story in your lives. But how many of you have ever made a New Year's resolution in your life? Ever in your life? And keep your hand up if you actually kept that New Year's resolution. How many of you? Okay, so some people, right? I feel like it feels like almost a dying fad of making New Year's resolutions. Maybe we're just getting lazier and we're like, I am the way I am. I'm not gonna try to do anything. When I was in high school, I remember we went to church that morning. It was like a couple days before New Year's Eve, and the pastor said something about making New Year's resolutions that you can actually do. And I was thinking, I want to challenge myself, and I was like, I think I could go a year without soda and ice cream. And so then later, some people are like, oh, I don't know about that one. But so I told my mom later asked me what I was planning on doing. And I was like, I think I'm gonna go the whole year without having soda or ice cream. And she looked at me and she's like, James, you're supposed to choose something that you can actually do. And I don't know how you guys were, but being as stubborn as I am, if you tell me I can't do something, that's all the ammo I need. And that was the easiest year without soda or ice cream I've ever had in my life. So I did it. Obviously, I have not kept up with that, but I did it for a year, and that's what matters, right? And so I love New Year's resolutions. I think it's pretty fun. It's gotten me to do some things I didn't think I could do, and I'm someone that I need to constantly prove to myself that I can do things that I don't think I can do. So a previous New Year's resolution was to run a marathon, and so I did that. I'm not in shape to do that right now, but I did it. And so there's things like that. And so I decided this year I'm gonna give everyone in my family, I'll give them their own New Year's resolution. So I have a 10-month-old daughter, Charlotte. Her New Year's resolution starting tonight. She's sleeping through the night. We're done with it. So I'm not getting up. We are done with it. I told her, she looked at me. I don't know if she knows, but that's her New Year's resolution. So we're done with it, Charlotte. You gotta figure it out, girl. And then Eleanor, our oldest, she just turned 2, on the 21st, so just a few days ago. And it's time that she starts pulling her weight around here. So, for the rest of the winter, she's gonna be using that snow blower. She's getting out there. And then you know what? Come spring, she's mowing too. I don't care. So that's kind of for her. But and then for my wife, my sweet wife, man. She's fantastic, but she's got a New Year's resolution coming her way too. She doesn't even know that I'm gonna tell all of you this, and I'm pretty excited that she doesn't know that she's gonna tell you about this. My wife is perfect in every way. I love her so very much, except this one thing. And I know I heard a couple people go, yeah, I'm gonna let it out here. I'm gonna bring all the cards on the table. My wife leaves apple cores everywhere. And in her defense, she's like, I'm a mom on the go. I've got we've had 2 under 2. She's like, I just have to eat snacks whenever I can. So I'd like to show exhibit A of where she leaves her. That's just the car door. And guys, you might think it probably can't happen this long. That was a photo from 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I told our executive pastor, Aaron, about this a couple years ago, and he just thought it was hilarious. And so I was like, the next few times she leaves an apple core around, I'm just gonna send him a picture of it. So that's what I did. And not only does she do it when she's driving, let's go to the next photo. Yep, she does it when she's in the passenger seat too. Yep, so she calls it passenger princess when I'm driving and the girls are in the back. So she's supposed to, sit and just kind of get to do whatever she wants. It really just means leaving apple cores everywhere. That photo was taken 2 days ago. So this has been an ongoing problem. And not only is it a car issue, that's what I'm trying to say. Let's go to exhibit C. You see the next one, it's on the couch. Okay, yeah, so she just leaves it on the couch. Our dog hadn't had a chance to get to this yet. And it's, her New Year's resolution is you just gotta throw them away. I don't know why this is so difficult, but so that's the New Year's resolutions in the Teichman household. And I'm sure after hearing that, my wife will give me a whole list of New Year's resolutions, as I probably deserve. One of them being, and I was like, what would be a good New Year's resolution for everyone in the room? And it's probably if you told your spouse, or if you told them that you would do a specific house project and you still haven't finished it, or you got halfway done, this year you gotta finish it. You gotta start and finish it. But be aware, because if you finish that, the next one comes up. So So it's, you got to play the delicate game, maybe wait until December 31st to get it done so there's not time to think about the next project, because I have played that game and it's still not ending. But oftentimes, right, when we do New Year's resolutions, we focus on doing big things, like I said, like maybe not eating sugar or trying to get in shape, right? These are the big ones. Everyone goes, signs up for a gym membership, and gyms are just hoping that you forget you have a membership so they can just keep making money, right? That's literally their model. And so, yeah, it's just kind of funny that these are often New Year's resolution things, but today we're gonna kind of do a little bit of a spiritual assessment about where you've been in 2023 and where you wanna go in 2024. So we're gonna ask 3 questions that I'm gonna encourage you to meditate on with people around you. This is not something that you can think about just by yourself. I want you to have conversations with the people in your family, your friends, your small group, and talk about what does it look like. Let's do a spiritual assessment for where we're at and where we want to go. Because with a new year comes a chance to start a new story, kind of a new chapter, right? There's nothing inherently special about January 1st, but it does help us feel like we can get new planners and new journals, right? We kind of like help start the new year, right? I know there's some people out there that love doing stuff like that, but it does give us a good opportunity to kind of almost forgive ourselves for like the past and help create a plan for what's new. Right, and so that's what we're gonna be talking about today. So if you celebrated Christmas with us last week, like Scott mentioned, we're glad that you're here. I want to encourage you to continue to lean in to what God's doing in your life and the life around you. Here at Calvary, we are just a family of Christ followers here in primarily, right, the Sarpy County area, and we're not perfect, but we're just trying to learn how to love each other better and love God and love our neighbors and love God. That's really kind of what we just focus on. But the Bible doesn't say anything about commemorating Jesus's birth, right, with this big Christmas thing. There's not like a command to do it, but we do it because the one time a birth is celebrated in the Bible, right, the angels come and says, for behold, I bring you good news, a great joy that'll be for all the people. And the full band of angels all show up and they say, you know, God, like glory to God in the highest and on earth, and on peace to earth on men on whom his favor rests. And it's like a giant party. And then 30 years later, Jesus begins his ministry, right? This baby that they were celebrating begins his ministry, and he gets baptized and he starts telling the good news. And the good news is that the kingdom of heaven has drawn close. That's what it says in the beginning of Mark's account of the gospel. He says the good news is that the kingdom of heaven has drawn close. And everywhere Jesus goes, you see heaven and earth beginning to touch places once again. That's how the story of the Bible starts, is that they're together and they've been ripped apart, and Jesus is coming, and he's coming to bring these things back together again. So everywhere Jesus goes, he heals people and he tells people, hey, go and sin no more. Turn from the way that you've been living and pursue Jesus. Let's help pursue a life that we love each other and serve each other well, the way that God has intended us to do. But it was an uneasy sight for the religious and political powers of the day. And so spoiler alert, if you haven't got that far in the book, they killed Jesus. I'm sorry if book's been out for a little bit, so you probably should have read it by now. But they kill Jesus and all these, and it just seemed kind of like everything just kind of gets deflated. And it like the love and joy and peace, these things that Jesus talked about, just seemed like maybe he was just wrong about some of those things, right? And then 3 days later, he was resurrected from the dead, and he goes and visits people, and he's seeing people. And the people that were closest to Jesus, his disciples, the followers of Jesus, they start to realize he wasn't talking about building an earthly kingdom here. He was talking about ushering in the heavenly kingdom and helping bring these spaces back together again, right? And so for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. This is what the gospel story is all about. And so then from there, Jesus sends out, gives the Great Commission. He sends people out to go plant churches and go tell this good news. This good news that was once for a specific group of people is now for everyone. This is a part of the good news for everyone, everywhere. And so Jesus sends these people out. They go start planting churches. And as they're kind of telling these people, they plant churches, and then they go to plant more. And then they're checking back in with the people that have been planting these churches and running it, and just helping them to continue to make sure that they're staying on the right path, that things aren't getting confused, and that the story is staying the same, right? He's helping them do this. And so this is where we find Paul. Paul was someone that was a Jew that was persecuting and helping kill these followers of Jesus, these early followers of Jesus. He has a life transformation, and he begins to be one of the major church planners in the early church. So he goes from killing the Christians to being the one that is like, no, this is actually the real deal, and he's planting churches all over the world. And so today we're going to look at a letter that he wrote to this church in Rome, right? It's in Romans. And he's trying to encourage these early believers and trying to help them. But the problem is they're in the Roman Empire. They're at the hub of the giant Roman Empire. And so there's a lot of persecution from the Jewish leaders and the political powers, these same ones that killed Jesus. And so this is where we find him today. And we're going to be in Romans chapter 12. But he starts that chapter in verse 2. It says, "Do not copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way that you think." And that in and of itself could be like a whole thing, right? Do not copy the behaviors and customs of the world, but let God transform you. And so this is where we kind of find our first question that I would encourage you to meditate on in the coming week as we kind of enter into this new year, is who or what is keeping you from living the gospel? If Paul is talking about the importance of being able to be transformed and changing the way you think, it kind of goes to show that the way that we naturally want to think is probably not helping us live out the gospel. And we can't do that if we don't know the influences that are kind of coming into our mind and that are keeping us from living the gospel. A lot of us would probably like to think that we're independent thinkers and things don't affect us and we see things objectively. That's just not the case. Everything in modern psychology would say that is not the case. You've probably heard the law of averages, or you're like the seven people that you spend the most time around, right? If you've ever spent time with people, maybe a coworker that just happens, they just swear a lot and they're just like always negative and things like that. Do you feel better or worse? Yeah, you feel worse, right? It doesn't feel good to be around people like that. And I'm sure some of you have been around people that are really life-giving, people that are very compassionate, they're very gentle, they're kind, and then you leave your interactions with them and you're like, oh, it feels better. Like this is what we're fighting against. And maybe it's been a little bit of like, if you spend a lot of time watching the news, you're probably gonna become a pretty negative person. You're gonna become pretty polarized to one way or the other, and it's just gonna affect the way that you think. Maybe it's the music or the TV shows or things that we think maybe aren't affecting us, but the longer that you spend times in those things, they begin to affect you. And so the first thing we need to do is identify who or what is keeping us from living the gospel. And maybe even for some of it, maybe it is that we need to form a new habit to create space so that we can have good things speak truth into our lives. We need to start our days by reading the Bible or having conversations with friends about Jesus and what God's doing in their life, because we need to be encouraged by that so we can help shift the way that we think. And this brings us to the second question of, well, what does it mean to live out the gospel? If our first one is trying to help us identify, like, are we living out the gospel? Then what does it actually mean to live out the gospel? And Paul, this person who's writing a letter to the people who are kind of under the oppression of the religious leaders and the political powers at the time, he gives a little bit of a template of it. He says, this is the fruit that your life should have if you are living out the gospel. Because some of the times, sometimes when we're just like kind of going about the day and we're just like, no, I'm a follower of Jesus. Yeah, like this is the thing I do. But if there's no fruit on the tree of your faith, or there's no fruit on the tree that comes with following Jesus, then a really hard question is, am I really following Jesus? And so let's go on to see what Paul has to say. And so we'll pick back up in verse 9. And he says, don't just pretend to love others, really love them. Hate what is wrong, hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. We got 2 more verses, everyone. Stick with me. You're doing a great job. Live in harmony with each other and don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people and don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Man, that just like sums it up. So let's just do that in 2024 and call it a day, yeah? Like there's a lot of stuff there. And I think if you started to break down, I think each and every one of us would begin to find things that's probably pretty challenging for us to hear, right? So if we remember the context of that these people are being persecuted, and yet Paul is still telling them, don't just pretend to love others, really love them. This is also in a part of the world where people could literally be killed for their faith. They could honestly be killed for their faith. And he's saying, don't just pretend to love others, but really love them. See the humanity in them, see that they were made in the image of God and actually love them. And I'm convinced that if we all started our days reading this section and thinking about the people that we're gonna interact with the day, if we meditated on this each morning or as we drive to work or as we walk to school or whatever the case is, I think we would begin to shift the way that we view the people around us, and we probably would begin to do these things more. Guys, 2024 is gonna be an interesting year. I don't know if you know what's going on, but we're gonna have a presidential election, right? So we're gonna talk politics for a second. All right, how many of you are excited for the presidential election? No, I'm just kidding, don't raise your hand. But if we think as followers of Jesus, the culture in America, I'm not making statements about either thing, but if you think the culture in America is gonna get better in 2024, it's not. It's not going to. It's going to get worse. And so I think let's look back at those verses again. If you'll just put them back up on the screen of the 9 through 18, right? Don't pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love others with genuine affection, unless they're on a different political party. Oh wait, no, it's not there. But like, right, we get it. I'm not going to do that with all of it. But this is the thing. It's going to get worse, and I think we need to focus on what Jesus came here to do. This is in my notes. I'm going to go rogue for a second. Jesus came, and people often thought that he was ushering in this worldly kingdom. And then when he died and rose again, his followers kind of understood it's not about bringing in a worldly kingdom. It's about bringing in a heavenly kingdom to earth. And regardless of where you find yourself and the political spectrum and different things like that and all the culture, I'm probably a little bit of a pessimist to believe that either party ever in the history of the world is ushering in the kingdom of heaven. That's not their job. It's the job of the local church. It's our job as followers of Jesus to usher in the heavenly kingdom here on earth. Jesus prays and he does he kind of shows people how to pray, and he says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven. We are ushering in heaven on earth. This is what it's all about. And so I'm not saying it doesn't matter, the presidential election doesn't matter. It matters. Obviously, it's gonna affect like our daily lives and the lives of the culture around us. Like, it does matter, it just doesn't matter most. And so we can't allow things that don't matter, that don't matter most, we can't allow them to sit and take the highest priority. And I've said this to a couple different people, and I promise I'll get back to my notes and we'll stop doing this. But if the one thing that you can do to influence the presidential election is check a box once every 4 years, that pales in comparison to the amount that you can serve people and love people and show people who Jesus is in your community, in your everyday life, right? I'm not saying it doesn't matter, it just doesn't matter most. Okay, back on track. Okay, here we go. And so this is where we're gonna hit the third question that I think we should be meditating on, and it's, what is it costing you to live out the gospel? What is it costing you to live out the gospel? I don't know if you've been here for a little bit. Scott, I think about 2 months ago, he asked that question when he was speaking one of the days, and that has been like burned in my heart over the last few months. It's just what is it costing you to join the gospel? Or sorry, what is it costing you to live out the gospel? Obviously, I oversee outreach at Calvary locally and globally. And so I go to a conference once a year. It's called ICOM, the International Conference on Missions. And it's a good time, but it's a lot of our global partners that they live in different parts of the world. Often they come back for this. It's really kind of to do some soul care. There's like some counseling opportunities for people that are doing global missions all over the world. And so it's not really for me, but it's like for other people. So it's a good time to kind of see everyone without having to, go all over the world, which is a huge blessing. And there's a group of like missions pastors. We all kind of gather together and just kind of talk about best practices and what are some challenges that you're facing. And one of the guys was talking about just how he's trying to get his church to focus on like caring for the community. He's like, I go overseas, work with all of our global partners, and a lot of them have been in prison for their faith over the last year. They've been in prison for sharing the gospel. They've been in prison for baptizing people. They're afraid of the government and things that are gonna happen. And the church is continuing to grow, and people are continuing to follow Jesus regardless. There's all these house groups and small groups that are joining, and people are coming to know Jesus, and it's growing and growing and growing regardless of the immense persecution. And then he's like, and then I get back here to his home church, and he's like, and then I just want people to care about something. And he's like, it's almost like just because we have air conditioning that like instantly like we don't really care about the gospel anymore because we don't need to pursue God because we can be our own God. And I was like, oh, that's a really, really interesting thought. And he was asking because I was on a panel earlier and just talking about some of the things that Calvary does outreach-wise. And sidebar, Calvary has done an incredible job of serving the community. And earlier this year, we received an award. I don't know if you guys know this. It's not something that we I don't know. But we received we entered the Hall of Fame into the Papillion La Vista schools, Calvary Christian Church did, for being a community booster through our work through the clothing closet. So congratulations, all of you. Great job. Yeah, it's awesome. And so I was kind of just sharing like practically like what were the steps to even make that happen. And so I'm just so grateful that Calvary's always been a church that has been very forward thinking. And as he was asking questions to me about how did you get people to care about that? And I was like, well, one, this has been a part of the DNA from Calvary from the beginning. This is not something special that we did, but this is the cost of us following Jesus in our community. The cost of us doing the Sarpy Care Center, the cost of us doing the food pantry, these are things that cost money. But when we put our money where our mouth is, and this is the cost of what it looks like to love people in our community. And so it's not something like crazy strategic. It's just this is a natural outpouring of what it means to follow Jesus. But he was talking about, I think there's something really special to be said about what it costs you to follow Jesus. And if you've been following Jesus for maybe just a little bit, or maybe specifically, I guess, if you've been following Jesus for a long, long time, and you look back at your life before you followed Jesus and after you've been following Jesus, if those two lives look the same, there's probably something wrong, right? There should be something naturally different about following Jesus. All these things Paul talks about. If our mission here at Calvary is to live and love like Jesus, that there's a cost to doing that. There's a cost with our time. There's a cost with our resources, with our energy. It is like joining a small group and being in close community with people that are going to encourage you to be a better spouse, to be a better friend, to be a better follower of Jesus, not just to be better, but to help our lives be transformed into what Jesus looked like. And so that's what we're constantly doing. We're on a journey that never ends, where there's no destination, there's no time where you just finally get there, but it's the constant renewing of your mind and being transformed to be more like Jesus. And there's a really interesting thing that my wife was telling me about. My wife reads a lot, bless her heart. I wish I could read as much as her. She's awesome, minus the apple cores. But she was telling me that she was reading an author, and they're like, what do you want your spiritual legacy to be? In 5 years, in 10 years, in 25, in 50 years, how do you want people to talk about your spiritual legacy? Oftentimes in Western culture, we talk a lot about what's the inheritance that you're leaving, what are you helping leave for your kids, how you're saving for retirement. And there's a lot of talk about the financial investment and the financial legacy maybe you're leaving for yourself or for family, but there's not often a big talk about what are you leaving spiritually. In all that time, when it's all said and done, do you want your family or your kids or your grandkids or even your great-grandkids that maybe don't know you super well, do you want them to think of like, well, I think they used to go to church occasionally, and maybe they took my parents when they were younger, but it just kind of was their thing. And when I went to college, I just didn't really like do anything with it. And I think my parents still would say they're Christian, right? Or would you rather them say like, actually, yeah, they were actually kind of a foundational piece for our family following Jesus. They showed us what it looked like to follow Jesus. They were super compassionate, right? All those verses we listed off, like, man, how awesome would it be if they described you in that way? Like they loved one another. They were always excited to help others who were in need. They were always hospitable. They didn't just act like they loved people. They really loved their neighbors. And they kind of showed us, we had conversations about Jesus and what it looked like to follow Jesus. We wrestled through like, well, what does this look like in American culture? And we had a lot of those conversations. They were always encouraging us. Yeah, we read our Bibles separately. Sometimes we read them together as a family, but we prayed together. And I just remember they would call me and just tell me that they were praying for me and encourage me. And man, they just really helped set the foundation for what it looked like to follow Jesus in our family. And oftentimes I think what I see happening globally with the global church and what I see happening locally with the American church, there's almost feels like two different strategies. In American culture, we talk a lot about individualizing your faith. It's a personal walk with Jesus, and it is those things, right? Like that's a part of it. And then when I see the global church operating, it's like, no, this is a community thing, and we work together, we serve each other, we help share resources, and the focus is on like, this is a communal thing. It's way less personal. I'm not saying either one's right. I think both of them are needed, but they have to have parts of both. Right? If it's only a communal thing, if you go off to college or if you move away, then you're isolated and your faith will die. You need to have the personalization of, I have a responsibility to pursue Jesus, and I have a responsibility to seek what that looks like in my life. But also we need to not negate that it is about caring for our community. It's about bringing heaven to earth now. And there's a mandate that we are called to do this. In Calvary, I love our church family. Our church is, I don't know how big it is, probably 1,700 people, right? We'd be crazy to think that if 1,700 people can't shift the culture of Sarpy County or of Bellevue and Papillion, our workspaces, the places we find ourselves at, how different would your job look like if people would describe you in all of these ways? That same legacy that I'm leaving, how do you leave that spiritual legacy in the places that you find yourself every day? What is your faith costing you? It might cost people thinking that you're kind of weird, but no one thinks it's weird if you love people well, if you pursue them, if you ask them, like, what's been your experience with the church? What's been your experience with Jesus? Just encourage them. This is what it looks like to follow Jesus, and our faith should cost us something. To really follow Jesus, to pursue Jesus, it has to cost something. I'm not saying you have to go to a place where it has to cost you your life every day, but in American culture, it probably will cost your reputation a little bit. And if that's what it costs, then guys, that's not that big. That's not that big of a price to pay. And so this week, I want to encourage you, don't have conversations with just yourself. Don't allow it just to be something like, oh yeah, I'm meditating on myself, I'm thinking about it myself, because we all know what that means. We're not thinking about it. Have conversations with people. Have them as you're going. There's this really interesting thing that happens that gets said a lot in the Bible. It's the theme of remembering. And in Deuteronomy, at the beginning of the Bible, it says, I even put it in here for you so I don't have to mess it up. It says, repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road, when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. We have to write these things on our hearts so that we remember and that we can become transformed by them. The verse that we started this morning with was Romans 12, verse 12. It says, do not copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way that you think. What are you gonna do in 2024 to continue on that journey, allowing God to transform you? What steps do you need to put in place? Who do you need to hold you accountable? Who do you need to ask to go with you? If you've been following Jesus for a long time and you're like, hey, I'm doing all of these things, my challenge to you would be then, who are you bringing along with you in 2024 that doesn't know Jesus? Who are you showing? Who are you helping leave that spiritual legacy for? Right, I kind of joked about like New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the day, and obviously those are all New Year's, those don't matter. I will pick up 1,000 apple cores in my life, and it doesn't really bother me. But what would bother me, and what I know my wife does so well, is she's very intentional with discipling herself. We disciple each other and discipling our daughters to leave a legacy of people that know the love of Jesus and are living and loving like Jesus. Knowing that Jesus came to this earth, he put on flesh and dwelt among us, and he knows what it's like to be a human. He knows what it's like to struggle, and he came to live a perfect life and die for us so that we can be back in relationship with him again. Bringing heaven and earth back together again. Those are the resolutions that matter. Financial resolutions, physical weight goals, whatever, physical resolutions. All those things are good. They just don't matter most. So do them, but put the most emphasis this year on what spiritual resolutions are you going to make? What is going to be different in 2024? Because we have an opportunity to start a new story in your life and in the life of all the people that are going to come after you. Let's pray. God, you are good. God, thank you for coming to this earth. Thank you for not being a God that's distant. Thank you for being a God that cares so much that you decided to come so very close to us. And thank you for being a God that is focused on what it's like to just reunite us with you. God, you've given us a template to show how to love our community, how to love our families, how to love each other. And I pray that in 2024, we won't let things that don't matter more matter most. It's gonna be a hard year. It's gonna be a difficult year. And I pray that instead of typing comments on Facebook, I pray that you would humble us and that we would pray on our knees for our neighbors. We would pray on our knees for the people that we disagree with, and that we would pray that they would come to know you and believe in the one that you have sent. God, you are good all the time.